Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Ramblings of an Old Fart podcast. Hello, my name is Craig Warren. I'm 71 years old, been married almost 53 years. Father of 9 and grandpa to a bunch. I'm sort of retired. I retired at 65 to provide full-time care for my wife, who's had some serious health issues. But lately I realized that I needed something to do to keep my mind active. So why not a podcast? I have a lot of experience. I've done a lot of different things in my 50-plus years in the workforce. I definitely have a lot of opinions. So what more would you need? I should mention that I have never been a member of a political party, and I do not intend to do so. My podcasts do not come from a political place, just from a factual and common sense place. Today I've titled this podcast, Dig Baby Dig. This is in correlation with President Trump's drill baby drill thing, mentality. And that's all bled over. That whole thing with the oil wasn't just about oil. It was about mining our own materials here, like especially these rare earth elements for all of the new electronics, the batteries, the chips, all of that stuff. Well, let's start kind of at the beginning maybe a little bit. We've been told for quite a few years, for a long time basically, that China had all the rare earth elements tied up. We had to buy from China for all of the chips and the EV batteries and all that stuff that we needed. It had to be made in China. This was definitely not true. I think it was a con job by liberals and environmentalists who just didn't want us to find it and mine it here in the U.S. I'm not sure that was 100%, but I'm pretty sure there was something to that. If it wasn't so destructive, though, it might be kind of a funny moment. But the truth is, it's not funny at all. You see, all it took was somebody like President Trump and his people to bring back the idea of American greatness. His drill baby drill mentality, that's all it took to expose this big lie. You see, recently there have been several large rare earth element deposits found right here in the U.S. Actually, they were not hidden at all. It's just that there was no incentive to go after them because of all the regulation and the environmental stuff. The incredible thing is at the same time, the Trump administration, through tariffs and negotiating, have created an environment that is bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. So now we have the raw materials, and we have the demand, or at least the demand is coming. It's kind of a perfect storm, if you will. It could also help Trump do that make America great thing. Make America great again, which was his thing, his promise. Don't get me wrong, I have a few issues with Mr. Trump, but I believe in giving credit where credit is due. Let's take a look at how some of these things are lining up to create hundreds of thousands of new jobs and add trillions of dollars to our economy. And I truly believe that's the potential. But let's kind of look for a minute on how we got here. Through a lot of the liberal leadership and other things, we have kind of shifted focus from a nationalism, if you want to call it that, to a globalism thing. We were told that if everyone traded with each other, no one would go to war because it would be too expensive. But the reality is that these authoritarian regimes realized that they could use our dependence on their processing plants or their oil or whatever have it as a weapon. You don't have to be an isolationist to want a strategic home base. It's like a house. You can be friends with the neighbors, but you still want your own generator and a pantry full of food just in case the power goes out. I mentioned finding deposits in our own backyard here. There's a bunch of lithium and copper. Huge deposits have been confirmed in places like Thacker Pass, Nevada, and the Salton Sea in California. For years, we were mining some of these things, but we sent the stuff to China for processing. My idea is if we mine it here, we process it here, we use it here. We benefit the American people with our resources first. Call me crazy, but that's my idea. It's called strategic autonomy. That's what the experts call it. I just call it a great idea. It's about damn time. So just south of me here in Utah, also there's a Soldiers Pass area, Lake Mountains region. A company called Ionic Mineral Technologies confirmed a massive find at a site called Silicon Ridge. It's a high-grade deposit of rare earth elements and critical technology metals like lithium, gallium, and germanium. This is what they call a halloysite. It's a clay deposit, more like what the Chinese have found, and that's what they have been mining to dominate the world market. The key to this, though, is a shovel-ready project. It doesn't take a lot of work to get to it. It's already there. And it uses a much cleaner extraction process rather than the traditional hard rock mining stuff. And then we have Paradox Basin. That's additionally here in southeastern Utah. It's being developed for lithium brine. They are re-entering old oil and gas wells to pull out lithium-rich water, which works perfectly for our refine it here theme. And this one might surprise you. It did me too. We're talking about coal country, but with a twist. Leftover environmental waste, coal ash and coal tailings that were left over from the coal mines. Basically an environmental hazard at this point. But we can mine this without the digging breakthrough, Researchers at Western Virginia University and Northeastern have perfected a way to use a microwave reactor and chemical baths to pull rare earth elements out of coal waste. Estimates suggest that there are 11 million tons of rare earth elements sitting in U.S. coal ash landfills and ponds. That is nearly 8 times our current known domestic reserves. However, that known domestic reserves is going up every day. On the East Coast, while Appalachia and area, including Pennsylvania and West Virginia, they're the big players here, right? But there's also significant focus on Kings Mountain area in North Carolina. That's coal country too. And this has been revived as one of the largest hard rock lithium mine projects in the world. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about a couple of these and why it's important, because things are going really fast there. The Salton Sea area in California. They have confirmed enough lithium there to power 375 million EV batteries. They're starting to call it Lithium Valley now. And then we have phosphorite deposits in Florida, in the southeast. Recent studies show that the waste product from phosphate mining, which is used for fertilizer, contains massive amounts of yttrium and neodymium, which are essential for magnets and things for wind turbines and military technology. This is another one. This could actually be an environmental cleanup as well as a tremendous asset for our country. Okay, so these finds actually strengthen my argument that I've had for a long time. We need to find it here, right? But that's no longer an issue. We're finding it. We have plenty of it now, in most cases. The biggest problem now is just the processing plants. If we're going to dig it here, we should refine it here. We should produce it here, right? We should benefit America first. That's my mantra, and I'm going to stick to it. As of early 2026, we are still in a race to build the refineries for this coal ash and the lithium brine and those things. If we just dig it up here and we ship it to Asia for processing, we really haven't solved the energy hostage thing. We've just changed the name of the kidnapper. The short answer is we've already started to do these things, though, and I am really glad to see that. But the floodgates open really between late 2027 and 2030. But right now, as of April 2026, we are in the peak construction phase. We're moving from the laboratory to industrial scale. And here's kind of a timeline for the specific areas that we've been watching. Here in my home state is actually leading the pack on the refine it here thing. As of late March 2026, the White Mesa Mill in Utah officially produced its first commercial-grade heavy rare earth oxides. They are currently in a pilot or trial phase period. producing about a kilogram a week of high-quality terbium and dysprosium. They're on track to hit full commercial scale production by 2027. This is a big deal because this is the first time in decades that this has happened on U.S. soil without Chinese involvement. Then we have the Nevada and the California lithium issue. This is where the drill baby drill thing comes into part again, as far as I'm concerned. It's kind of ready to hit high gear. The Thacker Pass in Nevada. This is currently a massive construction site with nearly 1,800 workers. They hit a major milestone in February 2026 with a massive Department of Energy loan. They are targeting mechanical completion by late 2027 with full battery-grade lithium pouring out shortly after. In the Salton Sea in California, they are currently running demonstration plants. Geothermal energy production is expected to start by the end of 2026, with actual lithium extraction scaling up in 2027 and 2028. And then we have the mining waste there, the coal ash. Companies like Realloys have already locked in the infrastructure. They're currently using feedstock from various North American sources, including coal waste, to create alloys in Ohio right now. See, there's some processing going on there as well. And then in Kings Mountain area, North Carolina, this major lithium project just cleared its final federal permitting hurdles 3 days ago. Of course, that was in March 30th. So it's more than 3 days ago now. But they're moving into the fast-track construction phase. If you look at these dates, 2026 is the year of the foundation. We are building basically a bridge, if you will, back to our own shores. We're no longer, hopefully very soon, we will no longer send our stuff out, have somebody refine it, and then send it back. I often wonder, and I know this wasn't just strictly economic, because it doesn't make sense. If we can mine it here, we have to put it on a big old barge and ship it to China. They refine it and then send us back to us. How could they possibly do it cheaper? Unless there's funny business going on. But a lot of it was, as we talked about, from the environmental phase. It took so long and so expensive to get the permitting process done. Okay, but let's talk about this hostage thing a little bit. We have been held. We know from the oil. We already had that discussion in the other podcasts. But we are having it with the rare earth minerals as well. But that's starting to break down by 2027, when the first large-scale domestic shipments from these refined materials hits the market. The problem is we are essentially in a 12 to 18-month danger zone where we are still vulnerable while these plants get finished and get into full operation. And here's one thing that I touched on, but I'd like to make sure I make it clear. While some of these deposits were already technically known to geologists for years, they weren't economically real until recently. And this is how this drill baby drill thing impacted this mining stuff. Mentality has changed. That's what I want to say. And we've directly accelerated these finds over the past 15 months because of it. And we talked a little bit about the national energy emergency thing that Trump talked about on his first day. On his first day back in office, he signed an executive order declaring a national emergency. This wasn't just about oil, though. It was specifically named, it's specifically named in that order that critical minerals were a national security priority. It gave federal agencies like the Bureau of Land Management and others the authority to bypass a lot of this bureaucratic red tape that had stalled projects for some of them more than 10 years. This is why we're seeing projects like the Ambler Road project here in Utah. And those sites are moving at lightning speed. The projects were stuck in the permitting purgatory, if that's what you want to call it. They were suddenly fast-tracked because of these things. This is a brand new development you'll want to check out here. The administration just launched recently a $12 billion strategic stockpile called the Project Vault. The government is essentially telling mining companies, if you dig it here and refine it here, we will guarantee to buy it for the national stockpile. This removed the financial risk for companies before. See, before they were afraid that China would just dump cheap minerals on the market and bankrupt them. They put in all the expense to build the refineries, do all this stuff, put all the investment in, only to have China undercut them, run them out of business. With the U.S. government acting as a guaranteed buyer, the drill baby drill mentality provided the financial floor that these companies needed to start digging. I have to mention here, there's a real close alignment to the tariff thing that Trump did. You have to realize early on in our country, our founding fathers realized that if we didn't do something to protect our manufacturing businesses that we're trying to start here, manufacturers in Europe, Great Britain, and all over Europe, who had been in business for some of them generations, would be able to undercut them here. They also, in a lot of ways, actually in fact, I heard one time in Great Britain it was illegal for you to sell plans to build a weaving machine or even sell a weaving machine to the U.S. They wanted to keep them tied to Great Britain for all of those products. So that's why we instituted the tariffs. I know people thought that was terrible Trump did that, but that was how our country was founded, and that was how it was financed for well over 100 years. I actually anticipated this shift based on things I heard Trump say before the election. In January of 2026, a new executive order was signed. We had talked about that. The administration explicitly stated that mining minerals domestically does not safeguard national security if we still depend on a foreign country to process it. So now we're using this Defense Production Act to fund the building of refineries next to the mines, like the ones you're seeing here in Utah. It's now becoming official policy. The administration has been very vocal about saving coal, but not the way you think, right? We've added that twist. Coal is now a mineral source, not an energy source. Well, not direct. We're not going to burn it. They have directed the Department of Energy to prioritize grants for turning those coal ash piles, as we mentioned, into rare earth refineries. It's a way to keep coal communities employed by turning their waste into the gold of the high-tech world. To look at this through the math lens, which, that's what I really like to do, it wasn't necessarily a conspiracy to keep us hostage here for the last little while, but it was a 30-year period where the world chose cheapness over security. The one world community idea. It operated on the belief that if China could do it cheaper and we didn't have to deal with the messy side of it, getting our hands dirty stuff and the pollution, everybody won, right? Let's take a look at that. For decades, environmental regulations in the U.S. made it incredibly difficult and expensive to permit new refineries. Past administrations and environmental groups pushed to keep the dirty part of the supply chain out of the U.S., right? The chemical leaching, the toxic waste. As long as it doesn't happen on our soil, it's okay. That seemed to how it comes down to me. It's how I see it. But we've effectively exported the pollution to China. China was happy to take it because they used low labor costs and lax environmental standards to crush the competition. By the early 2000s, they had a near monopoly because no U.S. company could compete with their subsidized prices. But economists through the 90s and the 2000s argued that the interdependence thing was a good thing. They believed that as China refined our minerals, they wouldn't risk conflict because their economy would collapse without our business. They didn't account for a hostage scenario like what we've seen over the last few years. They didn't think that China would use the control of all these rare earth minerals that we needed as a political weapon. We saw that in April of 2025, right, when China retaliated against the U.S. for tariffs. So now we're seeing a shift here. In January of 2026, executive orders explicitly state that domestic mining is useless without domestic refining. For the first time, the government is using the Defense Production Act. We talked about it. But we would rather have a well-regulated refinery, say like here in Utah, than be at the mercy of some regime in Beijing, China, right? At this point, we're almost totally 100% reliant on China for 12 key minerals. That's not a very good place to be in, as far as I can see. But like I said, these new finds in Utah, Nevada, and coal country, California, are changing things. I want to touch on something. Here's how the wrong experts led us into this, and who the new experts are that are going to get us out of it, or at least I hope. The experts of the 90s and the 2000s, mostly from Wall Street and major Ivy League economics departments, argued that the U.S. should be a service economy, not a manufacturing one. They believe we should do the high-level design, the intelligent stuff, and let the world, mostly China, do the dirty work. They treated energy and minerals like they were consumer goods, like a toaster or a t-shirt. They forgot that energy is the foundation of everything else. But now, we have a different set of environmental experts. By making it nearly impossible, we are now using the Defense Production Act to crash build these facilities. See, when we were shipping everything to China, basically we have China a 30-year head start on all this stuff. There are the experts who are currently driving Utah and Nevada. This is who they are. They're geologists, people who have been saying for years that the dirt's here, we just haven't been allowed to touch it. And then we have the strategic autonomy crowd. I'm part of that group, I think. This is the new class of experts, often military and national security, who argue that resilience and non-dependence is more important than efficiency. They're the ones behind this Project Vault and the new Utah Mine refining initiatives. Where does this leave us? Basically, we are starting this year. Big things are happening in 2026. A lot happened in 2027. But the real rollout starts in 2028 through 2030. That's the period where the U.S. shifts from discovery to actual industrial scale production. Okay? That's going to be a big deal. We already have some plants here in Utah that's already expected by early 2027 to reach full production. But what is that going to do for us? And we can talk about all these individual, but what does that plan to do for us over the next few years? By 2030, the one world community model will be replaced by a massive domestic manufacturing base if we can continue down this road. The U.S. semiconductor market is projected to hit $1.6 trillion by 2030. This is driven by the massive onshoring of chip plants. Those are already designed and being built as we speak. The data centers that are coming back, they will account for nearly 9% of all U.S. electricity demand. But because we are going to be able to build these these EV batteries and these storage batteries, we'll be able to power those storage facilities. The modern investments, like the ones currently being fast-tracked, are projected to add an additional $240 billion a year to our U.S. GDP by 2030. That's expected that it will increase real disposable income per capita by 2030 to about $6,200 a year. The human element here. This should, if everything goes of course the way they predict it at this point, it's estimated that 1.5 million new jobs in the energy, mining, and manufacturing sectors will be created. Those jobs didn't exist in 2020. In Utah, the Paradox Basin and the Silicon Ridge projects will have moved from pilot to permanent by 2028. It'll be in full swing. If 2026 is the year we start pouring the concrete for our foundation, 2028 is when we put the roof on the house. But 2030, that's when we finally stop paying rent to the rest of the world. We stop being hostage. We stop being a victim, if you will. I'm going to leave it there today at that. I want to thank you for joining me. I hope you found it entertaining or educational or thought-provoking. Join me next time, won't you? I'm Craig Warren, and this has been the Ramblings of an Old Fire Podcast. God bless you and keep you till next time.